Elias Mercer had lived his entire 43 years on the same stretch of red soil, a modest farm tucked between the low hills of the northern continent. His family had broken that land generations ago, long before humanity ever learned it was not alone in the universe. Long before trade lanes, alien embassies, or the quiet but ever-present galactic compact that supposedly kept the peace. To Elias, the universe was still mostly dirt, weather, and patience. The morning everything changed began like any other. The sun crested the hills in pale gold, illuminating rows of grain engineered to survive harsher climates. Elias walked the fields with a handheld scanner, boots sinking slightly into damp earth, listening to the familiar hum of insects and the distant lowing of livestock. His farm was small by interstellar standards, but productive enough to supply several nearby settlements. He was checking a faulty irrigation node when the scanner chirped sharply. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the symbol that flashed across the cracked screen, a glyph Elias had never seen before, angular and old-looking, accompanied by a warning tone that raised the hair on his arms. "Probably junk," he muttered, kneeling and brushing dirt away from the metal object his plow must have unearthed days earlier. It was half-buried, smooth and dark, clearly not natural stone. When he touched it, warmth pulsed under his palm. The glyphs flared to life. A column of pale blue light shot upward, piercing the sky like a beacon. The air vibrated, deep and resonant, as if the planet itself had exhaled. Elias staggered back, heart pounding. What in all the stars? The light faded as quickly as it had appeared. The object went dark, inert once more, as though nothing had happened at all. Elias didn't know it yet, but he had just invoked an ancient alien law older than human civilization itself. 3 hours later, the sky screamed. Elias was in his kitchen, arguing with his comm unit, which stubbornly refused to connect to the regional network, when the windows rattled violently. Outside, clouds twisted unnaturally, spiraling inward as 3 immense shapes tore through the atmosphere. Warships. They were unmistakable, kilometer-long hulls of black and silver, bristling with weapon ports and glowing runes. Each ship hovered silently, defying gravity, positioned in a perfect triangular formation over Elias's farmland. Sirens wailed from distant settlements. Emergency channels finally crackled to life, overlapping voices shouting in panic. Unidentified alien vessels. Repeat, unidentified. Compact enforcement ships. Markings confirmed. Civilians advised to shelter immediately. Elias stood frozen on his porch, straw hat clenched in his hands. Of all the places in the world, the ships had arrived here. Over his land, a beam of light descended from the central ship, stopping just short of the ground. Within it, a figure materialized, tall, elongated, draped in layered metallic robes. Its face was a smooth, reflective mask etched with the same angular glyphs as the artifact. The being's voice echoed directly inside Elias's mind. By activation of Relic Law 17 Omega, custodianship is invoked. Identify yourself, claimant. Elias swallowed hard. Name's Elias Mercer. I'm a farmer. There was a pause. The alien's head tilted slightly. You have triggered a covenant predating your species' recorded history. Your world is now under review. Review. Elias repeated. Look, if I did something wrong, I'll bury the thing back where I found it. The alien's presence seemed to intensify, the air around it humming with restrained power. Ignorance does not negate consequence. This relic signifies ownership challenge. Ownership of what? This planet. By midday, Representatives from Earth's planetary council arrived in a flurry of transports, accompanied by pale-faced diplomats and heavily armed but clearly outmatched soldiers. They formed a tense semicircle behind Elias, who stood alone facing the alien emissary. The councilwoman in charge whispered urgently, "Sir, step back. We'll handle this." Elias shook his head. "They didn't come for you. They came for me." The alien raised one slender hand, silencing all sound except its voice. "The law is clear. Any species that activates a dormant custodian relic must present a champion. Said champion may either relinquish the claim or defend it." A murmur rippled through the human delegation. "Defend it how?" Elias asked. The alien's mask reflected the sky, the warships, the tiny, fragile humans below. "Through trial." The trial was explained quickly, brutally. Long before the Galactic Compact, ancient civilizations seeded worlds with relics, failsafes against conquest. If a world's dominant species was deemed too weak to defend itself, it would be claimed, governed, or stripped of resources for the greater good. But there was a loophole. Any individual who activated a relic could invoke the right of defense. A single champion, representing their species, could challenge the enforcers in a test of resilience, ingenuity, and will. Victory meant permanent sovereignty. Failure meant subjugation. Elias laughed, short and disbelieving. "You're telling me I have to fight you? I grow wheat." "You endure," the alien corrected. "That is sufficient." The council begged him not to agree. Military analysts whispered that no human had ever survived such a trial. Elias listened quietly, then looked back at his fields, his home. "They picked the wrong world," he said softly. And he accepted. The trial began at dusk. A containment field rose around a section of farmland, isolating Elias from everyone else. The alien emissary vanished, replaced by an automated voice announcing the first phase, environmental stress. Without warning, the temperature plummeted. Frost raced across the ground, killing crops in seconds. Elias's breath crystallized as he staggered, pulling his coat tighter. He didn't panic. He'd lived through bad winters, power outages, failed harvests. He scavenged broken equipment, fashioned shelter from irrigation panels, burned dried stalks for heat. When the cold shifted suddenly to blistering heat, he rationed water and buried himself under soil during peak temperatures. The aliens escalated. Predatory drones emerged, mimicking extinct apex hunters. Elias outwitted them with traps meant for wild animals, luring them into mud pits and collapsing tunnels. When they adapted, he adapted faster. Days blurred together. Sleep deprivation. Hunger. Pain. Through it all, Elias kept moving. The final phase came without announcement. The ground shook as a massive construct descended, an armored sentinel, easily 3 stories tall, armed with weapons capable of leveling cities. It advanced relentlessly, tearing apart the land Elias had tended his whole life. Elias stood his ground, bloodied, exhausted, hands shaking. He had no weapons, but he had a tractor. He'd spent years repairing it with salvaged parts, jury-rigging systems no engineer would approve of. As the sentinel fired, Elias drove straight at it, ramming its knee joint at full speed. The impact shattered the tractor and destabilized the machine's balance. When it fell, Elias climbed onto its back, pried open a maintenance seam, and shoved the still-active relic core into its systems. The sentinel froze, then shut down. Silence fell over the field. At dawn, the containment field dropped. Elias collapsed to his knees as medics rushed forward, but before they reached him, the alien emissary reappeared.